He admits that he felt like an old, forgotten relic.
A relic. That's
Yeah.
heavy.
It is. He notes that in this isolated, wheelchair-bound state, only a few people would even bother to visit or call him. The text doesn't really dwell on rage. It dwells on the heavy, suffocating weight of that isolation.
The quiet.
Exactly. But instead of letting his hard drive crash, to borrow your phrase, he turned inward. He explicitly compares himself to a caterpillar inside a cocoon.
A cocoon. See, that changes the framing entirely. A cocoon isn't a tomb, it's a place of deliberate transformation.
Think about the biology of a cocoon, right? We tend to view it as a peaceful resting stage, but biologically it is violent.
Yeah, the caterpillar literally digests itself.
Down into a cellular soup before it can rebuild into something that flies. From the outside, a cocoon looks dead, dark, and restrictive. But inside, it is an environment of intense, vital reconstruction.
Wow.
Vincent was using the profound isolation of his wheelchair to rebuild his mind.
And to understand where he found the grit to endure that kind of, cellular level reconstruction, we actually have to follow Vincent's mind as it looks backward.
Right, to that memory.
Yeah, he shares this incredibly visceral flashback. He's sitting on the veranda of his new home. His wife, Lindsay, has just wheeled him out there. He's looking at the lush green layout, feeling the breeze, and his memory unexpectedly drifts back decades.
To his 20s.
Right, to this incident in his 20s, a memory of desilting his house's concrete ring well.
I want you to picture yourself in this scenario, listener, because it is terrifying.
It is absolute nightmare fuel. He's standing at the very bottom of this deep, dark, narrow shaft. He is knee-deep in slush.
Just muck and water.
Yeah, and he's working in incredibly dim light, manually shoveling buckets of wet earth. He describes this hypnotic, exhausting rhythm like filled buckets go up the rope, empty buckets come down, over and over.
Until fatigue leads to a critical, near-fatal miscalculation.
Right. In that dim light, he realizes too late that he has shoveled away too much earth from directly beneath the bottommost concrete ring.
He undermined the foundation.
He undermined the structural integrity of the entire shaft, and suddenly gravity takes over. He describes the massive concrete rings beginning to groan and jerk downward.
Oh, man.
The heavy grinding creak of the concrete starts echoing in the tight space.
So the well is actively failing while he is trapped at the absolute bottom of it.
The rings are still intact, but they are shifting violently. He realizes he has only seconds before the whole column collapses, so he grabs the rope and begins to climb, just clinging for his life.
But what's fascinating is the physiological restraint he shows here.
Yes, even in a state of sheer panic, fight or flight adrenaline pumping, he notes one highly specific, crucial detail about his escape. He had to force himself to climb while deliberately ensuring he never kept his foot between the intact shifting rings.
Because if the shifting rings suddenly dropped and slammed together,
while his foot was wedged in the gap,
it would have acted like a multi-ton concrete guillotine.
Exactly. He literally clawed his way out of the dark by relying on intense focus and a rope.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, that terrifying physical escape, that well is the exact blueprint for his mental escape decades later.
Wait, you mean climbing out of the dark of the cocoon?
Exactly. In his 20s, he used a simple rope to pull himself upward out of a collapsing physical structure. In his 50s, trapped in a failing physical body, he uses a touchscreen mobile phone.
Just a phone.
Just his phone. He writes about constantly pushing himself to learn, researching, reading, growing, and emerging as what he calls a perfect technician to tutor.
And he did all of this using just a smartphone.
Right. The medium changed from a rough rope to a smooth screen, but the survival mechanism, that relentless upward climb out of the dark, is identical.
And the climb absolutely works. I mean, at the age of 58, using that mobile phone to relentlessly educate himself, Vincent gains the capability to teach 10th grade students.
It's amazing.
He and Lindsay completely transformed their quiet home into a buzzing educational hub. They run evening tuition classes for various grade levels right out of their living room.
It's a total rebirth. He transitions from the forgotten relic, waiting for the phone to ring, to an active, essential architect of his community's future.
But, and this is important, the text highlights a really stark, painful contrast in how people perceive him now. Vincent points out this massive gap between reality and assumption.
It's one of the most poignant observations in his entire reflection. Vincent notes that the people who actually interact with him, his students, their parents, his family, they consider him an ace tutor,
Right, they see the sharp mind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But to outsiders, to people just passing by on the street, he is reduced to nothing more than a bare life on a wheelchair.
Bare life. Ugh, that phrase just stings.
It perfectly captures the reduction of a complex human being down to their physical limitations. But Vincent encapsulates this prejudice with a brilliant artistic metaphor.
The painting quote.
Yes. He writes, "Some people stand before a beautiful painting just staring at the crack on the frame missing to admire the painting."
The wheelchair, the neuropathy, the inability to use his fingers, that's just the frame. And yeah, the frame has a crack in it. But the painting itself, his intellect, his pedagogical skills, his resilience, is a masterpiece.
And passerby are so distracted by the damaged woodwork they don't even bother to look at the canvas.
It really challenges you to ask a very uncomfortable question about your own biases. When you look at someone with a visible disability, are you evaluating the art they're putting out into the world, or are you just judging the cracked frame holding it up?
That's a powerful way to put it.
And the art Vincent is creating is genuinely innovative. I want to spend some time diving into his specific teaching methods because this is where those bizarre items from the beginning of our deep dive finally make sense.
The analogies.
Yes, Vincent uses highly non-traditional methods to explain dense academic subjects. He calls his system Vincent's analogy, and he actively hopes it becomes a staple in every educator's toolkit.
And honestly, the confidence is warranted, given how effective the methods are. I mean, take trigonometry, for example.
Trigonometry is notoriously dry for a teenager. Sines, cosines, tangents, perpendiculars, hypotenuses. It's just a wall of abstract math.
It's awful to memorize.
Right. So to get his students to memorize the formulas, he uses that bizarre acronym PBPHHB, which translates to Premi's brother Prem hit her boyfriend.
It's completely absurd, but absurdity is a phenomenal memory anchor.
You are never going to forget a sentence with a little bit of neighborhood scandal built into it.
Never.
He creates a narrative hook in a teenager's brain for a purely mathematical concept. But his analogies get much more structural and honestly brilliant when he moves into physics.
The syringe.
Yeah, walk me through the medical syringe analogy because I struggled with physics in school, and reading this suddenly made the invisible world make sense.
Well, electricity is historically difficult for students to grasp because, I mean, it's an invisible force, right?
Right, you can't hold an electron.
Exactly. You can't watch voltage happen.
Yeah.
So Vincent maps the abstract dynamics of an electrical circuit onto a tactile everyday object, a standard medical syringe.
Okay, so how does he break down the specific components?
In Vincent's analogy, the empty space inside the barrel of the syringe represents the conductor where the electrons actually live.
Oh.
The plunger at the back, the piece you physically push with your thumb, acts as the voltage.
Because voltage is essentially the push that makes electrons move through a wire.
Correct. The plunger provides the literal push. Then you have the graduations, those little measurement lines printed on the side of the plastic barrel.
Right, the CC marks.
Yeah. Vincent uses those to represent joules, which is the unit of energy. Now, the actual physical force of the liquid flowing out from the needle, that is the current.
Oh, that's so clear. But what about the resistance? Because Ohm's law says that current is equal to voltage divided by resistance. How does a syringe demonstrate resistance?
Through the size of the hole in the needle itself.
Oh, wow.
Right. A smaller hole means higher resistance.
Huh.
If the needle is tiny, you have to push the plunger much harder, meaning you need more voltage to get the same amount of current to flow out.
It is a flawless one-to-one mapping of Ohm's law and circuit dynamics.
It really is.
And he does the same thing with the structure of an atom, turning it into a beehive. The nucleus is the physical hive. The proton is the queen bee at the center.
The neutron acts as the guard protecting the queen.
And the electrons are the worker bees buzzing around the outside.
And he adds a crucial detail about the electrons. He describes the worker bees constantly merging with the valence of neighboring flowers.
Explain valence for us really quick.
Valence is a chemistry term. It basically refers to the outermost shell of an atom where electrons are shared or exchanged with other atoms to create chemical bonds.
Okay, so by comparing atoms sharing electrons to bees visiting neighboring flowers, he makes molecular bonding feel natural and intuitive.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Let's look at why his brain works this way. Before Mr. Distel knocked on his door, Vincent's entire career was manufacturing and rewinding electrical transformers.
Right. And for context, a transformer is a device that steps voltage up or down using magnetic fields and coils of copper wire. It is a highly technical mechanical profession dealing constantly with invisible electromagnetic forces.
His entire adult life was spent forcing abstract, invisible energy into a physical copper wire reality.
Yes.
So his brain was perfectly primed to take complex, unseen forces like voltage or atomic structure and translate them into tactile, mechanical objects that a teenager can touch and visualize.
He never lost his manufacturing skills.
No, he just transferred them from building transformers to building minds. He's stepping down the high voltage of academic physics into a current his students can safely absorb.
That's a brilliant connection. I mean, he is still rewinding systems. He's just rewinding the way his students perceive the world.
It's beautiful.
But it's one thing to use mechanical logic to explain a physics circuit. The true test of his pedagogy is how he applies that analytical breakdown to something deeply emotional and messy.
Right.
Which brings us to his crowning achievement in the text.
What he calls his tough challenge. Teaching human reproduction to 3 adolescent boys.
I mean, think back to your own middle school or high school health class.
Yeah.
You know exactly how this usually goes.
Oh, it is a disaster. It's a room full of giggling, sweating, awkwardness, blushing, and absolute defensive deflection.
Yeah.
Nobody actually learns anything because everyone is too busy trying not to look embarrassed.
And there's a psychological reason for that.
Huh.
Traditionally, textbooks approach the subject chronologically. They start with anatomy, move straight to the mechanics of intercourse, then fertilization, pregnancy, and finally birth.
Right.
For an adolescent brain, starting a conversation with an adult about the mechanics of intercourse immediately triggers the amygdala. It kicks off an intense embarrassment response because it demands a sudden vulnerability about adult concepts.
So how does Vincent's mechanical brain solve an emotional roadblock? He flips the script entirely.
Completely.
He ignores the textbook's rigid chronological structure and reverses the chapter order.
He begins the curriculum at the very end of the biological process, with conception and labor. And pay attention to the specific, inclusive language he uses here. He repeatedly anchors the lesson with the phrase, "when we are in the womb."
When we are in the womb, not when a fetus is in a uterus, which sounds like a clinical distance.
Right.
He makes it personal. He makes the lesson about them.
What's fascinating here is that bypassing the defense mechanisms requires profound emotional intelligence. By starting with the womb and emphasizing we, Vincent fosters a deep, subconscious sense of shared origin.
He grounds the entire biological process in the young men's own existence and survival.
Yes, he taps into the natural reverence a child holds for their own creation and, by extension, the intense labor of their own mothers.
So by the time he slowly circles backward through the textbook to finally reach the topic of intercourse, the context of the room has completely shifted.
The boys aren't primed to treat it as a punchline.
Vincent writes that the students now subconsciously associate the topic with the gravity of their own parents.
The result speaks for itself. He writes, "There was no giggling or embarrassment, just genuine learning." The students remain focused, respectful, and engaged.
It proves that Vincent possesses an emotional intelligence that matches his scientific acumen. He circumvented adolescent awkwardness by grounding a clinical biological process in basic human empathy. He taught them empathy first and anatomy second.
It's a powerful reminder that a truly great educator doesn't just deliver data. They architect the emotional environment in which that data is received.
That is so well said. And looking at Vincent's legacy today, as outlined in the final paragraphs of his text, he is currently in his 60s, and his mindset is nothing short of phenomenal.
Despite the mastery he's demonstrated, he humbly notes that he is still learning to teach. The curiosity hasn't dulled.
He writes that he experiences no physical pain, he carries absolutely no regrets, he takes no geriatric medication whatsoever, and as a wonderful little window into his personality, he proudly identifies as a musicophile.
A music lover. It raises the ultimate question of the text, though. What is the lasting impact of this journey?
So what does this all mean? Vincent answers that directly. He writes, "Vincent is mortal, but his method is timeless."
Timeless.
He is fully aware he won't be around forever, but the way he approached learning, the analogies he created, the empathy he instilled in those boys that outlives him, it ripples outward.
He leaves the reader with an incredibly grounded final metaphor, synthesizing his entire life. The collapsing well, the business failure, the neuropathy, the teaching, he writes. Vincent fell like a seed to sprout from wherever it has fallen. My tribulations were the dirt.
His tribulations were the dirt.
He seems entirely at peace with the cycle of his life and whatever chapter comes next. He signs off the autobiography, waiting for whatever the next knock at his door brings, with a playful defiance. Expecting another knock on my door. Knock, knock, knock. Vincent, signing off, you alligators.
Signing off, you alligators. I just love that.